Hello, BookTube. I have some mail for you today, but it's going to be a murky experience. I've thrown every light that I have on in the place, but it's very dark today. For the first time in 52 years, Boston is getting actual, I had to Google it, it's called rain. And it's pouring down in buckets out of a black sky. So there's no light at all. And needless to say, there's a battle of wills going on about going outside. That curtain is blowing because it's 80, but at least it's raining, and that's great. But it means that the camera that I'm using only picks up ambient light. I don't have any kind of studio ring lights or anything like that. So we're just going to have to make do. I've got mail here that I rescued from the porch so it wouldn't get soaked, including a box. But once again, I have a suspicion the box is not what I want. It will be something good. It will be something I like. I don't mean to sound ungrateful. I know plenty of people don't get piles of books in the mail every day. Nevertheless, there's one particular item out there that I would really like. But I don't think the publisher's going to send it to me, and I don't think... I don't think the publisher's going to send it to me. And I'm not 100% sure that I need it anyway. But anyway, we'll start off with periodicals. I got a couple of great periodicals. The New Yorker. There is Don Quixote tilting at windmills. And this issue was really interesting because it has a long article. If I'm going to say it's interesting, I should say who it's by. The long article is by Brooke Jarvis. It's called Animal Passions, and it's about how Staten Island is experiencing an explosion of its deer population, and what that means, and why that might be, and what the locals are thinking about it. I thought it was, in this whole issue, the most fascinating thing. Loved it. Wish I had a place to keep it. You know, I like to pull things out. I don't save magazines. I like to pull out articles and put them somewhere. And it doesn't have to be the article doesn't have to be specifically about the book where I put it in. It just has to be the same general subject. And there was a book years and years ago. I think it was just called The Deer. It was a massive, like a 800-page natural history of North American deer, with lots of original artwork, paintings, and tons and tons of anecdotes, but also tons and tons of biology and natural history. And I don't have that book anymore, unless it never existed, and I never had it. But I think I did once have it. And that would be the perfect place to put this. I don't know that I have a book now that I could put it in. I'll cut it. I'll pull it out of this magazine and trim it and date it and fold it and save it just in case. And maybe look around online. Maybe I'm not imagining that book. But at least the other periodical is the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement. And in this case, the article in question that I'll be saving, I think I'll be saving a few things from this. I'm pretty sure that there are a couple of things in here that that go in books that I have. Yeah, there's a book on what the actual church-going experience was like in medieval England. There's a book on a noxious new title that I guess I'm keeping. There's a noxious new book called Read Until You Understand by Farah Jasmine Griffin. Read until you understand. There's no chance that I'm wrong. And I don't have any more understanding to do. I was born all-knowing. But I don't want to hear any arguments. I don't want to hear any nuances. I don't want to hear any responses. Just keep reading this over and over again until you think exactly the way I do. But there's a review in here. I haven't actually read it yet. I'm assuming it will be fawning, because the reviewer has almost literally a gun to their head. But that will go in that book. But there are a few others here. The Book of All Books by Roberto Colasso, and a few other things. But the one thing that I've read and that I will be keeping is a roundup. I don't know if you can hear that. That's just sheets of rain hitting the window. It's all hitting on one side. The rain is slashing down on one side and not touching the other side. But there's a long piece here, a roundup by A.N. Wilson on a whole bunch of books about Dostoevsky. And I have a hardcover copy of Crime and Punishment with a rather attractive blurb. And all my Dostoevsky stuff goes in there now. And that roundup was very good. Roundups are not easy to do. Not easy to do well, and A.N. Wilson here does it well. And my main caution with the piece going in was not whether or not he'd do it well. He's an old, practiced hand at this sort of thing. But that I have a sort of a chilled relationship with A.N. Wilson, just the writer. And I need to get around that. I need to just assess every piece of writing on its own feet, and unless I am 100% factually convinced that he's not just a crank. And I'm not, because most of the stuff that I read by him is fully under control. It's just a few things in the last 15 years that have been so wildly not in control and unedited, because I think he's probably something of a poobah, that have put me off completely. But I have to get over that reaction. Every once in a while I will get a London Review of Books or a TLS, and the feeling will be, oh, there's an A.N. Wilson piece, well, I'll skip that. And that, I absolutely should not do that. But this piece was wonderful, for instance, on Dostoevsky. But then we have packages. A whole bunch of packages and a tiny little box. A box that's certainly trying its hardest. So we will smile. We will put on diplomatic smiles for whatever is in that box. I'm sure it'll be something wonderful. And again, I know that not everybody gets books in the mail. It's like me Sainted Ma used to say a million years ago. There are children in India that are starving, you know. I always wanted to say to her, well, even if they were starving, I'm not sure they'd like any more than I do your 3-day overcooked pork chops. But anyway, let's see here. Oh, no. Oh, my. Okay, you writers out there for going through NaNoWriMo, you AuthorTube people. This is by Matt Bell, and it's called Refuse to be Done. How to Write and Rewrite a Novel in 3 Drafts. Oh, my. So this is going to be a paperback, a $16 paperback, and it comes out in March. And in it, the author draws on years of writing and teaching to deliver an accessible, direct, and concise guide to novel writing, from concrete tips that will guide writers of any genre to any stage of their career, from first to final draft. This book is intensely practical, focusing always on specific tasks, techniques, and activities for writing a novel, from the first draft all the way through final revision. So probably none of this, woo-woo, you have to be your book type thing. That's good. There are way too many books like that on the market. Divided into 3 main sections, each containing numerous subheadings and detailed items, the book is easy to use at any and every stage of the writing process, whether one is starting from scratch or already has a full draft to revise. And those of you who are doing NaNoWriMo with me will have a draft to revise on December 1st. 50,000 words by the end of the month. I am on track. My NaNoWriMo experience this year is very, very good. I'm learning something every day. I mean to make a separate video about it. Concrete examples from published fiction and media, as well as Matt Bell's personal experiences, bring further meaning to the tips and... Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Oh, hello. She's not the only adorable miniature schnauzer in our little corner booktube anymore. Do you want to get down? Is that why you're smooching with me? There we go. Some of you will already have seen the tiny little puppy, Harry. One of you emailed me and said, was it Shelley Swearingen? It's Shelley Swearingen, I think, who got a miniature schnauzer puppy named him Harry. And he is the most adorable little nugget in the world. And also, it has reminded some of you of when you were watching my videos 5 years ago, and just out of nowhere in one video there turned up a tiny little nugget that looked a lot like Harry. If I remember, I'll leave a link to one of the video where she introduces him. But it was a trip down memory lane for me. But anyway, my NaNoWriMo is going very, very well. I am ahead of schedule, and that's good. You want to be ahead of schedule in NaNoWriMo, because the end of November always throws curveballs. The real world does. So you want a cushion to fall back on. If you can, you want a cushion of a couple of days, figuring you're probably going to lose a couple of days at the end of the month, where you just can't write anything. Even as hard-assed as I am, I do admit that does happen. But the task that I set for myself, I'm writing a story about a young man who roots an electronic device that he gets online, a cheap electronic device, in order to expand its capabilities, and accidentally expands its capabilities far more than he thought he did. And what I wanted to do, the thing I wanted to stress, since writing a story is not, if you've done NaNoWriMo as many times as I have, I've also written many books when NaNoWriMo didn't exist. If I don't offer them for publication, but I love the experience of writing fiction. Just love it. Could not do without it. And when you've done it enough times, actually executing the story is not the challenge. Instead, the challenge I set for myself here was the slow, steady seep of the novel's progress. there are a couple of very, very delicate parts to it, and they've been a blast to write. But anyway, let's see here. Let's see here. The author shares a bounty of tactics to get through perhaps the most daunting stage of novel writing, actually writing the book. Well, NaNoWriMo will take care of that. If you're in the NaNoWriMo spirit, then you are writing without editing, and that is the whole point. Generate your first draft without editing anything, without editing yourself at all. That's all for later. It's a completely different process. Intended to push writers through the initial conception and get words on the page, this section includes strategies for process, such as how to regiment one's writing and track one's progress, to writing itself, and overcoming writer's block. Well, fantastic. So all of you know, this is going to be relatively cheap, $16 paperback. It's going to look just like this, and it's going to be in your bookstores in January. Or no, in March, in late March. So you writers out there have a book to pre-order, because I haven't read it yet, but it sounds like this is going to be refreshingly practical, which is great, because if you're a writer or a budding writer out there, then you know already what hoo-ha can fill these writing books in the market. And I guess there's a market for it. But a practical guide would be very, very welcome. Great. All right. So we're off to a fine start, except for the TBR part of this mail haul, right? My mail hauls often also inform my TBRs. They also I look at them, and if I'm getting a finished copy that's out this month, it suddenly goes on the TBR for that night. So what have we got here? Oh, this is another book from March. Oh, right. Okay, the publicist got in touch with me about this. Some of you are really going to find this intriguing. I don't have a pub sheet for it. But I'm sure it has a description somewhere. Yes? Okay, yes. This is by Alex Segura, and it's called Secret Identity, a novel. And it has comic book illustrations throughout that I imagine may be in color in the finished book. I won't know that here. But this is a novel about comic books. Let's see here. It's 1975, and the comic book industry is struggling. But Carmen Valdez doesn't care. She's an assistant at Triumph Comics, which doesn't have the creative zeal of Marvel nor the buttoned-up efficiency of DC, but it doesn't matter. Carmen is tantalizingly close to fulfilling her dream of writing a superhero book. That dream is nearly a reality when one of the Triumph writers enlists her help to create a new character which they call Lethal Lynx, Triumph's first female hero. But her colleague is acting strangely and asking to keep her involvement a secret. And then he's found dead, with all of their scripts turned in to the publisher without her name. Carmen is desperate to piece together what happened to him, to hang on to her piece of the Lynx, which turns out to be a runaway hit. But that gets complicated quickly. A surprise visitor from her home in Miami shows up unannounced, upending Carmen's personal life. A tenacious cop investigating the murder seems one step ahead of Carmen at every turn, and she must navigate the tangled web of secrets and resentments among the passionate eccentrics who write comics for a living. Okay, so this is going to be a comic book themed novel, and who is the author? He's the author of Star Wars Poe Dameron Freefall and the acclaimed Pete Fernandez mystery series. I don't know either one of those things. He has also written a number of comic books, most notably the superhero noir The Black Ghost, a YA music series, The Archives, and The Archies, and Archie Meets collection of crossovers. He's a Miami native, and he lives in New York City with his wife and children. Well, I don't know what the Archie Meets collection of crossovers is. Is that Archie Comics? I know a lot of those. Archie Meets the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Archie Meets other licensed properties. I don't know if maybe that's what it refers to. I'll have to look him up. But I don't have to look him up right away, because that doesn't come out until March. And this next one, another one of these big white envelopes. Thank God for them, because these things were soaked, and these envelopes protect things completely. But this feels like another finished copy, which is great. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, we saw this already. All right. This is indeed a finished copy. This comes out at the end of November, and this is by Elizabeth Samet, and it's called Looking for the Good War. American Amnesia and the Violent Pursuit of Happiness. And now it has a ton of blurbs. Did it have those the first time? Ben Fountain? Phil Clay, the author of Deployment. General David Petraeus, where that guy finds the time to do so much reading, but he does. Wow. Okay. Samuel Moyne, Drew Gilpin Faust. Okay, so lots and lots of blurbs, but no description. We'll just read that from the book, just in case some of you missed it the first time. In this book, the author examines the literature, art, and culture that emerged after World War II, bringing her expertise as a professor of English at West Point to bear on the complexity of the post-war period in national life. She exposes the confusion about American identity that was expressed during and immediately after the war, and the deep national ambivalence toward war, violence, and veterans, a history that was suppressed in subsequent decades by a dangerously sentimental attitude towards the United States' supposedly exceptional history and destiny. The author discovers the complex legacy of the war in some of its most heavily mythologized figures. The war correspondent epitomized by Ernie Pyle, the character of the erstwhile GI turned either cop or criminal in the pulp fiction and feature films of the late 1940s, the disaffected Civil War veteran that looms so large on the screen in the Cold War era Western, and the resurgent military hero of the post-Vietnam period. Taken together, these figures reveal key elements of post-war attitude toward violence, liberty, and nation, attitudes that have shaped domestic and foreign policy, and that respond in various ways to ideas about national identity and purpose established or affirmed by World War II. So on one level, on a non-charitable level, you could say that this book is seeking to remove World War II's privilege, to check World War II's privilege as the so-called good war. Of course, no war is good. So there was an element of sort of saccharine deception to that kind of PR all along. But nevertheless, the United States mobilized millions and millions and millions of people, hundreds of millions of tons of material and money in order to exterminate Nazism. So there is a raw kernel of good in the war. Nevertheless, we'll see how, I haven't read this yet. I have the advanced copy, I haven't touched it. We'll see how far the author goes. I have to confess, the element in there that intrigues me the most is that bit about Civil War veterans popping up in Westerns made after World War II. That got me thinking. Hearing that got me thinking about, there's something very interesting that could be done there, and it sounds like this author, I mean, if she teaches English at West Point, she's probably a pretty thorough researcher, probably a pretty clear thinker. I'm interested in that. We'll see what else she can do for me. And then this next one is not a box, it's an enormous manila envelope, just gigantic. So it's got to be a couple of things. There isn't anything this big that's coming to me that isn't going to come in a box. But we'll see. We'll see what we have here. Yeah, this is a couple of things. Okay, so what is the first one? Oh, very nice. Oh my, look at this. This is a selection by Christopher Tolkien of the pictures of J.R.R. Tolkien, his paintings, and it's in a slipcase. Oh, how very nice. Oh my. Shall we open it up and see what it looks like on the inside? Or is that going to take too much time and be too tedious? It could be too tedious because your humble host here has no sense of touch. I have virtually no sense of touch. And I'm not complaining about that. Because the alternative in the process that caused no sense of touch would have been daily pain. And I would, if given the choice between the two, I'd much rather have that than the other. Oh my, how very nice. Oh, how very nice. So this is just there's Hobbiton by the river. This is just a collection of Tolkien drawings with explanation. Rodwin, with explanations on the side there. And I imagine this also has an introduction. Oh, yes, it does. Okay, it has an introduction written by Christopher Tolkien, a brief thing written by Tolkien in 1979. And then we just move on to all of the artwork. Early and late. Fantastic. Incredible. Well, I don't have much of a Tolkien library. I'm not that sort. I have way too many copies of Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and whatnot, but usually not any of the ephemera, but this will be really interesting to look through. But there's something else in here, so we're not done yet. We'll I can't believe it! Oh! I cannot believe it. I've been thrown a curveball. I was expecting this to arrive in a box. It did not arrive in a box. It arrived in an envelope. This is the thing I was looking for. This is a new edition of a one-volume edition of The Lord of the Rings. Incredible. Incredible. Oh, they sent the pictures of Tolkien as well. I'm going to have to do a whole separate video on this book, but this has the cloth bookmark. It has extra strong binding. It's got the lettering of Mordor there on the spine, and it's got a die-cut cover. So the cover is the eye of Sauron. See, like that. And if I remember correctly, yes, it has. When you open it up, it has tipped-in features. Oh my! Oh goodness gracious! It has tipped-in features, including a map that's just tipped in. It doesn't fold out from the book. It's just added to the book, and it's considerably more detailed than the maps that I have in. There was an old 3-volume box set that was done 50 years ago that has the map I tend to look at for this, and this is considerably more detailed. Oh my, this is lovely. Oh goodness gracious! And the thing about, all right, so this goes along with the box set that we just got, because this is the first collected Lord of the Rings that has all of Tolkien's illustrations all throughout it. This is how Tolkien imagined his book. Oh man, oh man. I can't believe this. All right, well, yes, okay, and then there's a tipped-in map in the back as well. I forget what this is. Let's take a look at this one. This is Gondor and Mordor. In very precise detail, that's where most of our action takes place in the second half of Lord of the Rings. And here you get the topography, you get the minor rivers, you get all the stuff that you wouldn't get in a broader map. Oh, incredible. So, this is the Lord of the Rings in one edition. It's absolutely lovely. Let's look at the... Okay, so it has a white cloth bookmark. It's got the colored page ends there with the script of Mordor. It's got the eye of Sauron just peering out at you, but not illustrated on the cover. Instead, it peels back to the eye of Sauron on the book itself. It has 2 tipped-in maps, and it has all of Tolkien's illustrations. Some of you may have seen already. Some booktubers pre-ordered this thing, just sight unseen. I almost did myself, but I'm such a thoroughgoing book reviewer that my first thought was, well, will somebody send this to me instead of pre-ordering it? I may pre-order it anyway, just as a gift for someone else. But if you watched a lot, there have been a lot of unboxings of this thing, a lot of careful examinations of this thing since it started making its appearance. Very happy to have a copy. Very glad that the publicist actually sent me one. That's wonderful. I will write about this, of course. But I wanted to show it to you, and I may make a video on my own. But whether I make a separate video or not, just looking at this thing, I can already look at that. Look at this is in gold embossed on the letters are gold embossed on the cover. How incredible! Just looking at this thing, I can already I can attest now personally to the judgment that has been brooded about by a number of people who have since seen this thing. I don't think there's any question. I think it's so easy that it doesn't take much work to make the call that this is the single most attractive volume of Lord of the Rings that's ever been printed. For a general audience, I think there have been a couple of extremely specialist, very low number things that were done with all the bells and whistles that they looked like, they looked like something out of the Lord of the Rings era, and that is not this. So, and curious to know now if there are multiple volumes of this thing, multiple editions. And I got one of them. But even so, this is easily the most attractive Lord of the Rings one volume that I have ever seen. Fantastic to get this, just fantastic. And to get it along with that slipcase of Tolkien's artwork, all the better. Fantastic. I'm sort of blown away now, and needless to say, the anticlimactic nature of the box in this case has only been increased because I know now what it isn't. But let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. You never know. It could be something really interesting. But of course, the box itself has been packaged for a trip to the moon. To the moon. You don't need to do this. Absolutely don't need to do this. This is. I know that the U.S. postal system has gotten much worse, but it hasn't gotten so bad that you need to package the box like this. I would ordinarily suspect that this means it comes from one of you. Most people who overpack books don't do it for a living. But in this case, no, it comes from a publisher. So let's see what this is. If I can free it from the box without destroying it, that would be great. Yeah, I'll deal with that later. What have we got here? Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. Terrific. Okay, this comes out in a week here in November, and it's a naked hardcover. I didn't know that was going to happen. Very good. Very good. This is the FSG Poetry Anthology. I think we saw this in advance copy. This is just what it's going to look like. Fantastic. This marks the 75th anniversary of Farrar, Straus and Giroux. Wow. Okay. So in honor of that anniversary, the editors Jonathan Galassi and Robin Cresswell have cultivated an anthology comprising the wealth of FSG's poetic lineage to be published on November 23rd. This includes work from each of the more than 100 poets FSG has published in its 3/4 of a century. Wow. Fantastic. More than a compilation of greatest hits, the anthology features poems with vast breadth and depth, works that feel alive to this day. Ever since Robert Giroux brought T.S. Eliot to FSG in the 1950s, poetry has been central to the house's identity. Beginning with selections from our first generation of poets, Robert Lowell, Elizabeth Bishop, John Berryman, and the collection then broadens to reflect the expansion of our list from its core outward over the decades, including work from our international writers such as Joseph Brodsky and Pablo Neruda, Nobel Prize winners such as Derek Walcott and Louise Gluck, and emerging voices such as Roya Marsh, Chetla Sebri, and Valjna Mort. The anthology presents FSG's poetry list as it has evolved and widened over time. Terrific. Fantastic. All right, so that is not by any means a consolation prize. That is not at all. That is fantastic. Here, let's. I like to fold the sheet so that I can immediately see the date, but this is coming right up. Great. Fantastic. All right, well, there you go. That is the mail on this very gloomy day. We have the FSG Poetry Anthology, major poetry anthology for this year. We have Looking for the Good War, presumably, and not finding it. We have Secret Identity, a novel about the comic book world. We have Refuse to be Done, a new novel coming out in March about the writing process, about writing and revising your novel. We have Pictures by J.R.R. Tolkien, a big slipcase thing highlighting Tolkien's artwork. And most of all, in fact, so most of all that it deserves a separate listing here. Sorry about the moving camera. Frida is next to me and she's thrashing around like she was inhabited by demons. Okay, now she's jumped onto the floor. Ordinarily, I would feel sorry about that. I would miss her, but when she's thrashing around like she has epilepsy, when the camera's right on top of her, it's a little bit less inviting. And then finally, the last thing for today, The Lord of the Rings, in this gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous one-volume edition. Just incredible, with the bookmark and the writing and the tipped-in maps and all of Tolkien's own illustrations that run throughout here. I mean, look at that. That's Lothlorien in the spring, as Tolkien pictured it, not as some other writer, as some other artist did. I mean, I love the other artists that have illustrated The Lord of the Rings over the years, but this is a special publishing event, no doubt about it at all. So there you go. Wow. All right. Well, I said that my mail haul often determines my TBR for that night. I really don't have an excuse to read or reread Lord of the Rings, any part of it at all. I really don't. I have way too much to read, but I may do it anyway. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.